Journey to the West, an audio drama series. Chapter 2, Part 1. We have conveyed to you that the handsome Monkey King received his name and was elated. He went up to Puti and bowed to show his gratitude. The patriarch then ordered his other disciples to take Sun Wukong out of the gates so that they could teach him tasks like sweeping, greeting, and receiving people. All the immortals then left with Wukong. Outside the gates, Wukong paid respect to his many elder brothers, and that night a space was arranged near the corridor for him to sleep. The next morning, as well as the many days that followed, he would learn alongside his elder brothers about language, manners, Taoist text, calligraphy, and incense burning. When he had spare time, he would sweep the floors, tend the garden, and carry firewood or water. Here, he had everything he needed. And without realizing, almost 7 years went by. One day, the patriarch was sitting high on his dais with all the immortals surrounding him as he began a lecture on the Great Way. What a lecture! As if petals fell from the sky and golden lotuses burst from the soil. He spoke about Taoism and later Buddhism, and how natural it was for different beliefs to converge. Sun Wukong listened at the side and got so excited he was squeezing himself. He was in such a state of joy he could no longer hide his expressions and began flailing with all his limbs. The patriarch suddenly noticed this and called out to him. "Why are you putting on a crazy dance in the middle of class instead of listening to me?" Wukong answered, "I was paying close attention. Just now you came to a rather brilliant point that got me excited. That's why I was leaping about without realizing. Please forgive me, master." The patriarch said, "Since you understood what was brilliant, let me ask you, how long have you been in my cave?" Wukong answered, "I was born dim-witted and had no idea of the passing of time. All I remember was that whenever the stove burned out, I would go to the back of the mountain to collect wood. That place was covered with good peach trees. I've had 7 full meals of peaches there already." The patriarch said, "That place is named Hill of Ripe Peaches. Since you've eaten there 7 times, I assume it's been 7 years. Which direction of the way do you wish to learn from me from now on?" Wukong answered, "Anything you wish to teach me. As long as there is a whiff of the way, I will learn it." The patriarch said, "Within the sect of Tao, meaning the way, there are 360 side doors. Each entrance has its own fruit to gain. Which one would you like to enter?" Wukong answered, "Whichever one you wish me to enter. I will humbly follow your guidance." The patriarch then asked, "How about I teach you the way to the gate of Shu, meaning method?" Wukong asked, "What about the gate of Shu?" The patriarch answered, "In this gate are principles of fortune-telling." Wukong asked, "If I learned this, could I live forever?" The patriarch said, "No, not at all." Wukong said, "Then I won't learn it. Nope." The patriarch then asked, "How about I teach you the way to the gate of Liu, meaning schools of thought?" Wukong asked, "What are the principles of the gate of Liu?" The patriarch answered, "In this gate are philosophies and religious teachings." Wukong asked, "If I learned this, could I live forever?" The patriarch answered, "To do that would be like stuffing a pillar in the wall." Wukong said, "Master, I'm an honest fellow who's unfamiliar with insider slang. What do you mean by stuffing a pillar in the wall?" The patriarch answered, "When you build a house and would like it to be sturdy, you will build a pillar between the walls. But one day when the mansion is bound to collapse, that pillar will certainly have rotted." Wukong said, "Oh, in that case it won't last long. Then I won't learn it. Nope." The patriarch moved on to ask, How about I teach you the way to the gate of Jing, meaning stillness? Wukong asked. What fruit could I gain from the gate of Jing? The patriarch answered. Here it's mostly fasting and meditation. Wukong asked. If I learned this, could I live forever? The patriarch answered. To do that would be like the mud bricks on a kiln. Wukong said. You're being slippery, master. I already told you that I was unfamiliar with insider slang. What do you mean by mud bricks on a kiln? The patriarch answered. Just like mud bricks made from a kiln, though the shapes are set, they have yet been refined by water and fire. When heavy rain falls, they are sure to crumble. Wukong said. That can't last long either. Then I won't learn it. Nope. The patriarch moved on to ask. How about I teach you the way to the gate of Dong, meaning movement? Wukong asked. What about the gate of Dong? The patriarch said. It requires proactivity. You harvest the yin to nourish the yang. By strengthening your interior, you will master interactions with the opposite sex. Consuming various secretions from the female body is also included. Wukong asked, If I learned this, could I live forever? The patriarch answered, To do that would be like catching the moon in the water. Wukong said, You're at it again, master. I already told you I was unfamiliar with insider slang. What do you mean by catching the moon in the water? The patriarch answered, The moon is in the sky, its reflection is in the water. You can see it, but never touch it. All attempts will be in vain. Wukong said, Then I won't learn it either. Nope. When the patriarch heard this, he let out a gasp and jumped off the dais. He pointed at Wukong with a ruler and said, You macaque, not wanting to learn this and not wanting to learn that. What do you even want? He came forward and hit Wukong on the head 3 times. Then he folded his hands on his back, walked inside, and shut the middle door, leaving all the disciples behind. Those attending were scared out of their wits. They all berated Wukong, saying, You unruly monkey, how very ill-behaved you were. The master was teaching you methods of the way. Why wouldn't you learn from him and had to start an argument? Now you have offended him. There's no telling when he will come out again. At that moment, everyone was blaming him and being resentful. Wukong, however, was not angry at all. All he did was laugh and take the blame. Turned out, the Monkey King had already deciphered the code. The answer was in his heart. That was why he didn't bother to argue with the others and only held back in silence. When the patriarch hit him 3 times, he was telling him to be prepared for the 3rd watch, which were the hours around midnight. Folding his hands behind his back and closing the middle door was code for him to enter instead through the back door, where the patriarch would secretly give him lessons. That day, Wukong happily hung out with the others in the cave. He stared at the sky and wondered why night couldn't come sooner. By dusk, he went to bed like the others, closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, when in fact, he was calming his breath and preserving energy. In the mountains, there were no night watchmen or proper tools to announce the hours, so there was no way of knowing the exact time. All he could do was to control the air going in and out of his nose and use it to calculate how many hours have passed. At about the 1st hour of the day, he got up quietly and put his clothes on. Sneakily, he opened the front gate and kept himself away from the rest. Outside, the night was cool and clear. Look at him, tracing the familiar path to the back door and found it half open. Wukong said to himself in delight, The old master surely meant to give me lessons. That's why he left the door open. He then pulled himself forward and slid in sideways. Having walked to the sleeping couch, he saw that the patriarch was curled up in bed facing the wall. Wukong dared not disturb him, so he just knelt down before the couch. Soon, the patriarch woke up, stretched his feet, and muttered to himself, "Difficult, difficult, so difficult. The way is the most mystical. The golden magic pellet, nothing typical. No way to teach my wondrous spells without the person most noble, leaving me with a tired mouth, dry tongue, and words most hollow." Wukong responded by saying, "Master, your disciple has been kneeling in wait for a while." The patriarch recognized Wukong's voice. He got up to put on his clothes, then sat cross-legged and shouted, "You macaque! Why aren't you asleep at the front and instead came to me?" Wukong answered, "Yesterday you made a promise with me before the dais and everyone there. You promised that at the time of the third watch you will give me lessons from the back door. That is why I had the courage to come directly to your bedside." The patriarch heard this and was very pleased. He thought secretly to himself, "This fellow truly is born from nature herself. Otherwise, how could he have deciphered my secret code?" Wukong went on to say, "There isn't a third pair of ears in this room. There's just me. May you ever be so generous and merciful and teach me the way to immortality. I will forever be grateful." The patriarch said, "You are predestined to learn this, and I am happy to teach. Since you understood my puzzle, do come close and listen very carefully. I am about to teach you the wondrous way to immortality." Wukong kowtowed to show his gratitude. He then knelt next to the couch, wholeheartedly and with all ears, as the patriarch expounded the truth of his ways. That was when the origins of the way were disclosed. Wukong had a clever mind, and his luck had arrived. After he carefully remembered all the spells, he bowed to the patriarch in thanks and came out of the back door. Traces of white were seen in the eastern skies, and golden beams lit up the road to the west. Following the familiar path, he returned to the front door and quietly opened it. He went back to where he was supposed to be sleeping and rustled the bedding, saying, "It's lighting up. The sky is lit up. Time to get up." Everyone was still asleep, completely unaware of the fact that Wukong had got the goods. That day, Wukong spent his time fooling around, keeping his lessons secretly in his heart. And during the hours after lunch and before midnight, he focused on regulating his breathing. Soon, 3 years went by. One day, the patriarch again sat at the dais to give a lecture. He discussed examples and analogues and exposed empty words that failed to reveal the truth. All of a sudden, he asked, "Where is Wukong?" Wukong went up and knelt down. "Your disciple is here." The patriarch asked, "What have you been training in these days?" Wukong answered, "I've been feeling pretty enlightened recently, and my internal organs are building a stronger foundation by the day." The patriarch said, "Since you're enlightened and your organs strengthened, your body has been injected with divine powers. However, you must beware of the power of the 3 calamities." Wukong heard this and was silent for a long while before asking, "You must be wrong, master. I had often heard that if your virtues are great, you will live as long as heaven itself. And having found harmony with water and fire, no illness can grow in you. Where did this power of the 3 calamities come from?" The patriarch answered, "What you're taking is no ordinary path. You are to seize the creations of heaven and earth and invade the mysteries of the sun and moon. Once the magic pellet has built up in you, no demon or god could tolerate your existence. Yes, it does preserve your youth and prolong your life, but in 500 years' time, heaven will unleash the calamity of thunder on you. You must first identify your true nature, keep a clear mind, and avoid the disaster in time. If you succeed, you will live as long as heaven itself. If you fail, your life ends there. And in another 500 years' time, heaven will unleash the calamity of fire on you. This fire is no heavenly fire, nor is it common fire. It is called 阴火, or the fire of yin. It starts from the bottom of your feet and burns all the way to the top of your skull. By then, all your organs will turn to ash and your limbs will rot. 1,000 years of hardship, now a mere mirage. And another 500 years later, the calamity of wind will blow on you. This is no wind from the east, south, west, or north, nor is it wind of spring, summer, autumn, or winter. It definitely can't be wind blown through flowers, willows, pines, or bamboos. It is called 避风, or the monstrous wind. It will flow from the top of your skull to your inside, passing through 丹田, that region right below the navel, and all 9 openings on your body. Your bones and flesh will dissolve and your body will melt on its own. That's why you must avoid them all. Wukong heard this and his hair stood on end. He kowtowed faithfully and said, "May the old master have mercy and teach me the way to avoid the 3 calamities. I dare not ever forget the favor." The patriarch said, "That shouldn't be hard. But you are different from humans, so I can't teach it to you." Wukong said, "I do have a round head pointing to the sky and rectangular feet stepping on the ground. Just like the common man, I am equipped with 9 openings and 4 limbs, as well as all the internal organs. How am I any different from humans?" The patriarch said, "You do look like humans, but you lack their cheeks." This monkey, you see, had a face that was wide on the upper half and narrow on the lower half. His cheeks were hollow and mouth pointy. Wukong gave his face a rub and laughed. "Master, you aren't taking everything into account. I may not have fleshy cheeks, but I have cheek pouches that humans lack. This could make up for things." The patriarch then said, "Very well, then. Which one would you like to learn?" "One is called 天罡术, roughly meaning the arts of heaven, with 36 transformations. The other is called 地煞术, roughly meaning the arts of earth, with 72 transformations." Wukong said, "Your disciple would like to get as much as he can. I will take the arts of earth then." The patriarch said, "In that case, come forward and I shall pass the spells to you." He then whispered in Wukong's ears. No one heard what he said. The Monkey King's talent, you see, was so immense, you only have to open 1 door on his mind before hundreds of doors fly open. He memorized the spells on the spot, and by cultivating on his own, he managed to learn all 72 transformations. One day, the patriarch, along with his disciples, were enjoying the dusk outside of the Cave of 3 Stars when he asked, "Wukong, are you done with your work?" Wukong answered, "With the deepest gratitude to you, Master, my work is very much done and in perfection. I'm already capable of rising through the clouds to the skies above." The patriarch said, "Try flying up for me to see." Showing off his tricks, Wukong straightened his body and performed several somersaults before jumping up for about 5 to 6 zhang. That would be around 18 meters above ground. Then, riding on the clouds, he went on a round trip that took about as long as a meal and was barely 3 li in distance, which meant the round trip was less than 1.5 kilometers long. Wukong landed in front of the patriarch and crossed his hands, saying, "Master, this is what I call soaring on the clouds." The patriarch chuckled. "This is not even close to soaring. It only counts as crawling on the clouds. As the ancient saying goes, immortals travel to the northern seas in the morning and arrive at Cangwu at dusk. If they're like you, barely covering 3 li on a trip, then you can't even call it crawling." Wukong asked, "What do you mean by travel to the northern seas in the morning and arrive at Cangwu at dusk?" the patriarch answered. For those who soar on the clouds, they depart from the northern seas in the morning, travel past the eastern, western, and southern seas before arriving at Cangwu. Cangwu is another name for a place in the northern seas called Lingling. If you can travel across the 4 seas in one single day, then you can truly say you are soaring on the clouds. Wukong said, That sounds very hard indeed. The patriarch said, Nothing is too hard for the strong-willed. Hearing this, Wukong kowtowed with respect and begged, Master, do help me to the very end. May you have the utmost mercy and straight up teach me this cloud-soaring trick. I will never forget your favor. The patriarch said, When immortals soar on clouds, they start with a stamp on the feet. You weren't like that. When I just saw you go, you had to pull yourself up with a jump. In accordance with your movements, I shall teach you the somersault cloud. Wukong kept on begging still, so the patriarch taught him another spell, saying, To master this trick on the cloud, you must perform the right hand gesture and recite the spell with your fists clasped. Then, shake your body before jumping up. One somersault can take you 108,000 li away. 108,000 li would be about 54,000 kilometers in distance. In perspective, the circumference of planet Earth is only about 40,000 kilometers. The crowd heard this and started giggling. Wukong is in luck. Once he learned this, he could be a postman in the military and deliver documents around. He could make a living anywhere. At nightfall, everyone returned to the cave. That night, Wukong immediately went into focus and mastered the somersault cloud. From then on, every day, he lived a free and unrestrained life. That was also the beauty of immortality.